What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast, where we bring everything fresh and entertainment. I am your host, Drew Brumfield. Join with me today is Seth. Seth, how are you doing?
Doing great. I'm ready to talk about probably going to be the most overlooked game of this year, I feel.
More than likely, yeah. And so we're doing something a little different with this one. So it's not exactly a podcast. We are, both me, Seth, and even Robert have loved Liza P. It's been fantastic. But we're doing something a little different for instead of like kind of the normal podcast we normally do. We are going to take each of the bosses and put them in a tier list and rank them. So I want to kind of start this off with saying, Seth, you might agree with me. I don't think there's necessarily a bad boss, with the exception of maybe like one or two. But like 90% of the bosses in this game are like fun, memorable, and like an actual, like, you enjoy fighting them. Would you agree with that?
I would say for the most part, there's a couple. You're right. There's a couple of like stinkers in there, but
Yeah.
I feel for the most part, you kind of hit the money on the head, the nail on the head, where a lot of the bosses are just really well designed and serve a purpose. I would say even the most like controversial bosses, like one that's like, their moveset is kind of weird and stuff like that, serves a specific purpose of like trying to get the player to like learn the lessons of the game. So yeah, I would agree that like most of the bosses are really well designed here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And with the exception of like a few of like the human enemies, they're all like incredibly unique. Like a lot of them like there aren't two that are like very similar to each other. So with that little introduction out of the way, I think we should go ahead and start this off, and we'll be going in the order of when you encounter these bosses. So let's start with the very first tutorial boss, the Puppet Master. And this one, and Seth, we'll compromise and agree, and if we disagree, we'll try to find a nice medium. But I feel like for the starter, he's solid, but I think there's one that does a better job. So I'm thinking about throwing it in B tier. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there's a better sort of introductory boss to really train the player to how to play this game, because like when I played against the Parade Master, and granted I played these kinds of games before, but I feel like visually this boss is neat. The concept of like a sort of carny puppet that's lost its mind or whatever it is that they have. I really like his second phase. It's pretty metal, where he like rips off his own head and starts using it as a club. And the fact that like his chest sort of like not quite catches on fire, but it looks like it's overheating on the inside, so it's almost like bones. It really adds like just the visual look of this boss has really neat like gothic horror tones, and I like that a lot. I love visually the look of it. The actual fight itself, I feel, is pretty straightforward. It almost feels more like a mini boss, in my opinion. But I do like the look of it. I would probably say B tier. I agree with B tier. Not so much for the fight itself, but because the visuals are so on point with this game, and I think it's a great way to kind of like get the player into the atmosphere of what this game is about.
Yeah, I really like this boss, because with some enemies and some bosses, they're like, what was your... Because the whole point of this game is these were robots not meant for fighting, and they got corrupted. But I like this boss because you can clearly see, like, no, I see its purpose before it was a clown. Well, excuse me, a carny. There's different one's a clown.
Yeah.
But, like, you can see that, like, at one point this was, like, a child's, like, icon or whatever. But just got, like, corrupted and over time worn down, and to the point, like you said, it's ripping its own head off and throwing it at you. And so, like, yeah, I agree. Visually it's cool, but, like, gameplay wise, and I don't know if it's just me, there is a boss that feels like when I went to replay it, I forgot about this one because I thought the next one we're talking about was the actual real first boss of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so let's just talk about the this guy right here, the Scrapped Warden. Very kind of similar themes of like, yeah, I see what you were before you became like corrupted. I guess corrupted's not a good word because that's what they call the zombies. I don't know what you call the insane puppets.
We
But
could call it corrupted because but yeah, like I think it's fine to call them corrupted.
yeah.
Because like I don't think that they're called corrupted. They're called like petrified or something along those lines. It's whatever. Oh no, it's hold on. It's like homunculus or something along those lines. Give me a second.
Different word. Anyway,
I'll Google it.
Yeah. Well, Seth is Googling that. This boss, similar themes. It's obvious what this used to be, and I think it fits the world as well. This robotic warden. It comes down from the clock tower. It's a really sick scene. And this boss kind of teaches you a lot of what the game is. He has a really slow wind-up attack, so he spins his arm and holds it high in the air, waiting, and then drops it down. So this is the boss that like teaches like you need to start parrying in this game. And so for that, I'm gonna
by the way, they're called carcasses.
Oh, the zombie type thing, they're carcasses.
Yeah, they're all called carcasses.
Okay, then yeah. So Seth, I'm thinking there will be other people probably go ahead of him later, but I almost want to put the warden in A tier. Do you think that's too high, or what are you thinking?
I think A tier is good. I definitely think he is the first real kind of boss of the game that's going to challenge players. And like you said, it's going to teach players about like reading the patterns, perfect guarding. Like he especially is like I think one of the first bosses where he does the biggest like wind up attacks where you are just always off by a few seconds. Like you always think it's going to come a little earlier than expected or a little late. Also, his visual design is also great. I do agree with that. I like the whole like sort of overloading look of this police puppet. It's really cool that like all this electricity's going on. The fact that he's really gone feral. I like that one of his grab attacks is he literally grabs your character and like the best way I could describe it is it's not that he just slams you in the ground and bites you, but he does like the angry bite, like a child gets so mad at something that it just starts biting down on it or whatever. It's like it's so weird and like feral.
Yeah, it's very much not what you think a robot would do. It's very much like the Hulk beating up Loki in the first Avengers movie. Like it's such a funny animation and it's so visceral. Like to that attack, I will say. The one thing that keeps this boss from being S tier for me, other than there's a lot of really good bosses in this game, is it does have this boss in particular has the one issue that I do have with this game. The fact that it's really hard to tell what's a grab or what cannot be guarded or parried in certain games. Like, obviously, the red attacks you have to perfect guard. But there are some attacks that are an actual, like, grab. You can't guard it, you can't block it. He will pick you have to roll. But there's no visual indication other than you just have to know that. And this boss does kind of do that because he has a very similar attack where he just like jabs at you with his hand versus one where he swipes at you and grabs you. And so that was always kind of frustrating.
I definitely kind of agree with that. With like some of these bosses, his grab I think is a little bit easier just because I think he has a little bit of a longer. Like obviously, you're gonna get hit by it the first time. I really don't think. I think most players when they first see this attack, they're gonna try to guard it. But he basically like lifts up his right arm, and then it does like a little spin in the socket, and then he does the grab move. Once I got hit with the grab like the first couple of times, I'm like, okay, I know what to do. So I was able to dodge it. But I do agree that the visual language of this game does need to work on its grabs. There's one boss we'll talk about in particular that I think is particularly like egregious about it, and I'll get more into what I think Liza P can do to fix this in the future.
Okay, well, moving on. I don't even know if I would call this one a boss, but it was on the sheet, and that's the puppet of the future, this giant hulking behemoth. And on design, it's really cool, and it's intimidating because like you see it very far off in the distance, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's massive, it's giant. That said, though, when you actually fight it, it is a thing where you tap its toe, run away, tap its toe, run away, tap its toe, run away. Like, it's not the most fun to fight, but it's very cool visually. And so for me, I'm even thinking about putting it in C tier. I could be argued into B, but yeah, I think C tier.
I would probably be a little bit more
You want to be
unforgiving here than even you, Drew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go a little harsher than that. I think this is a D tier boss.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I agree that, like, he's not really much of a fight. He's just sort of like, he just like kind of walks around. You dodge most of his attacks. And that's really about it. Like, the hardest part about him is the fact that he shows up in a poison pool, and you have to, like, figure out, like, how to turn that off before you go fight him. He's just not interesting. I like the idea of visually it's this huge, big puppet, but at the same time, I don't know. To me, it's just, it's big, it's made of steel. That's it. Yeah, like, I don't think visually it's very interesting. Fighting it is not very interesting. It's sort of whatever. I do appreciate that you see posters of him, like, especially when you get to the exhibit. That's like, oh, that's a nice little bit of world building that they were, like, selling this idea of, like, the puppet of the future. We don't really seem to know what its purpose is. It could be a war machine. My theory is I think it's like some sort of like fuel carrying robot, because like it doesn't really have hands. It has these big metal like ball gas canisters, so I think it carries fuel around.
That makes sense. My idea was that I thought they were like a construction robot. I thought the idea was like they're originally designed to demolish or build up buildings.
That makes more sense than what I was thinking, honestly. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, now I see it. Like,
I think it's
a
like
little like wrecking balls.
Yeah, but I do agree with you that it's like, unlike the last two that we just talked about, you don't immediately see what its purpose is. Like, but also I do like, the more you talked about it, I was like, yeah, it's not. So many other bosses have way cooler designs and also like are actual bosses to fight. This one, like, the only way you die to this boss is you're just not paying attention, and that's it.
Yeah,
and you just hit one, two times, and he slams down on it.
Yeah, so this boss is definitely, I think, perfect for D tier. He is just it's just very unremarkable.
Yeah. So I realize that we don't have a spot for, because you see the human characters throughout the game, and I think it'd probably be better. Do you just want to? We can keep going this way, or do you just want to kind of put the human characters where we're thinking of right now?
Yeah, I think it's time we start talking about some of the human characters.
Yeah.
I will also throw this out here. Looking at this, like, the Atoned, Red Fox, and Black Cat. These are, and it's kind of a neat thing about this game where you can make choices and you don't have to fight everyone. So because of like my choices, I didn't have to fight the Atoned ever. I didn't have to fight the Red Fox or the Black Cat. So I just really don't know what their fights are like, just because I never fought them ever in any of my playthroughs. Nor do I really care to.
Yeah, I've only watched people fight Red Fox and Black Cat and the Atoned as well. But from what I can see, they're not super like in depth. Like, it's a lot of the human characters boil down to like they copy I guess you're copying theirs. But you have one of their weapons and they're copying it. Like, Red Fox is the dancing blade with a few extra moves. Black Cat is like that like signpost weapon, that stabbing weapon, but with a few moves.
The spear, yeah.
The spear thing, yeah. It's the one where like it can increase like I think your crit rate or something like that. It has a buff to it, and that's like most of the humans. Like, you know, White Lays, the Rapier, I think the Weasels, the Axe, the Donkeys, the Big Hammer. I forget what weapon the Atone and the Black Owl have, but you get the pattern.
I think the Atoned is like a pickaxe, but yeah, no, I get it. Like it basically, this game doesn't have PvP, but I imagine this would be like that because, like, you know, Drew, you might be aware of this, but just in case, like in the Souls type games, you would come across these things like NPC fighters or invaders. Typically, they're supposed to be like the single player versions of like players invading your world that you fight. And of course, whenever players invade your world, they're using just the moveset of weapons that you can also get. And that's kind of what they are. So because of that, it makes it feel like they're not as interesting to fight because for whatever reason, this is the same way in Dark Souls, and I think it's kind of the same way here. Their AI just doesn't feel as smart. It's very easy to sort of just like kind of the strategy for a lot of them comes down to just get behind them and backstab them. Like that basically comes down to it, and that's kind of what makes the fights underwhelming.
So, because I agree with that, and also like because they have the weapon moveset, you as P have so much more to your disposal between items and your Legion arm that like they'll always, and they also don't really use your any of the Fable arts either, so it's like they just always feel like watered down versions of it. So for that, I think they're more interesting to fight than I'm thinking C tier with all of them, and the only exception, So as I'm doing this, but I will say with the exception, actually no, I don't know, because one of these stands out more than the others. It's this girl,
the white lady.
Yeah. She spins around more and is actually like kind of a challenge, and also has like I swear has more. Well, okay, maybe not more than these two, than the Red Fox and Black Cat, but I think her story is very interesting as well. But I don't know if it. I don't know if it gets her up to B2. Oh, whoops.
I would probably say, I agree that it's safe to put like the rest of these NPC kind of style fights in sort of like C tier. I think there's merit to it. I think there's something valuable about teaching players how to fight these kinds of enemies. Once again, it's something where, I mean, granted, you'll probably be just backstabbing them most of the time, but it's also like, you know, might teach them more to guard or something along those lines. So I'm cool with having them just there. I think they serve a purpose. Story, I think, for a good story-wise thing, as well as like providing some sort of challenge in between like the boss fights in tougher areas. But I really think the White Lady does stand out, not just her visual design, but I think there's enough unique going on with her. She uses the rapier as like her weapon, but the fact that she has like her own unique moves, kind of like big charging attacks, a parry. She also has a unique dodge where she does like a twirl that sort of zips around. So like I think there's enough there to where she stands out more than the other kind of like regular Stalker fights.
Do you think it's enough to push her up to B tier, or do you think we should leave her in C?
I think you could say it's a B tier fight. I think there's something very interesting about like the music playing in the theater when you fight her. I think visually she looks great. I mean, granted, all the Stalkers and their outfits I think look great, but I think she particularly stands out, especially with her mask.
She looks cool. She's also
obviously a lot.
Oh, go ahead.
And she also feels like there was just more effort put into like her fight, you know? So because of that, I personally feel comfortable with putting her in B tier.
I don't think I'm gonna fight you on it. I think I kind of agree, because also like with her whole parry thing, she has some fun mechanics of like, obviously all these characters you can break their weapon, but even with her, I swear she gets harder when you break the weapon, because she goes, I swear she's hitting faster. But also like she has some fun moments where like you can kind of bait out her parry by doing a really long charge attack, so she'll whiff it. And like that's fun, and because of how fast she is and how much she's spinning, it's a lot harder to just kind of backstab cheese them. Like Mad Donkey and the Doctor and a lot of these other characters, like you can just kind of roll until they put their back to you and then back hit Fable Art. That's half their health. But because of how fast she is, you have to really work to get a back hit. And if you're playing like me, where you're motivity and you have a lot of slower weapons, she's actually like kind of challenging.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like we talked about, because I also ran into the same issue with her, where she is like basically like a death by 1,000 cuts, where like yes, like she's not doing as much damage, but she's putting out attacks so quickly that it doesn't matter. She's just gonna constantly stun lock you unless you dodge out of there. And I personally, it was funny because it's like that fight should have been a lot closer than it had any right to be. Because like once I break her weapon, it's like, oh, she's doing no damage. No, she's like pressing the attack. She's even more aggressive, it seems. It's a great way to punish a player for their hubris, because it's like, just because her weapon is broken doesn't mean she's out of the fight yet. So I have to give her props for that too.
I agree with that. Yeah, the more we talk about her, she could be.
I also points out like one of the problems with this game, where I really wish there was some sort of poise system, especially for the motivity builds. Like, I need some hyper armor, man. Like, I really do, because
some of them were.
Oh god, like I hate when I have like a huge, like big ass like sword that's like twice the size of Pinocchio, and yet my attacks are getting interrupted by little pokes and stabs.
Yeah, there's a few things of armor on like some of the Fable arts and like very specific weapon heavy attacks, but they're not always where you think it is, and it takes a while for that armor to like build up. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah, I wish there was a voice thing, but that's a future
one thing
topic.
I have learned is, and it might be, one thing I have learned, and I think it's from future updates of like doing this and like the studio taking criticism, which I appreciate, is I think most of the Fable arts, where if they have like they use 3 slots of Fable to use, those typically have hyper armor, I found. Which makes sense. It's like, if you're spending 3 slots of this thing, you better be able to land this. So that I appreciate that. And I don't know if that was the way it was in the original game, but I think it was feedback from the community. And so I appreciate that they've constantly made those changes. In fact, some of these bosses have been changed up quite a bit from like their initial release, apparently. But we'll get into those in a minute, I imagine.
Probably. Well, right now, we have the next kind of like really big boss after the Watchman is King Flame's Fuoco. He has a very similar name to a Pokemon that I almost said. Okay, but Fuoco. So this boss is kind of controversial because some people hate him because a lot of his moveset, at least in his second phase, is kind of he does the opposite of what a boss should do. He's going away from you, and he's kind of just filling the arena with fire. He does have a unique arena, and there is kind of a fun thing where you have to hide behind a pillar to avoid one of his attacks. But yeah, I will admit that he is kind of like a more frustrating boss to fight against. He's not necessarily hard. He just has a lot of his meves, especially in the second phase, is kind of like him walking away from you. So what are your thoughts on Fuoco?
Fuoco.
Fuoco.
I know, it's a weird name. Yeah, Fuoco. Fuoco.
Yeah.
But like, I think he's not my favorite, but really, it's not what a lot of people dislike. I actually don't mind his fire attacks or his little games of keep away, because I think there's just enough like bits of time in between that allows you to help close in. I also like the fact that when he does build the arena, it's very telegraphed, so you can just sort of like run behind the pillars to get it. So it's a fairly easy attack to avoid. I think the thing I'm not crazy about is a lot of his melee strings are very confusing, because it's hard to tell, because he's a rather big boss. So whenever he gets very up close in your screen, it's sort of hard to tell what he's doing. But basically, the top part of his body can actually turn all the way around 360 degrees. And what I found was that some of his attacks is he would do like one big slam attack, and then he would spin the top around and follow up with another one, and that second one always got me. I could block pretty much that first strike, but the second one and like maybe the third or fourth or however times he does it, gets me. And that was the frustrating part. And I think a lot of it is because it's hard to tell because the camera is so narrow when he's like on the screen, like whenever a lot of us are fighting in the melee, so we're going to be up close to him. He takes up so much of the screen, so it's hard to get a read on what his next melee attack is going to be just because he's so big. So that's my criticism of the boss.
I don't even know if it's the fact that he's big, because there are, like, looking at the bosses, a lot of them are much bigger than you. I think the main issue with him is he's very hunched over. So it's very easy to get actually like him on top of you, where he's like leaning over you. Almost.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not the fact his size, it's like, I guess like his posture is more awkward.
It makes it very awkward with the camera. And there's definitely like a couple of bosses that we'll be talking about too, where they're bosses where I think they could be really good or great even, but because of like how the camera gets affected by them, it makes me a bit more critical of their fights.
Yeah. So are you?
I feel like it's so. Go for it.
I'm gonna say, are you? Because originally, when I had this tier list in my head, I was thinking B tier, but the more we're talking about him, I almost want to put him in C tier.
Yeah, I kind of feel like he's a C tier. He's a cool looking boss. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I love the whole like furnace puppet design, and the whole like even the whole like spinning his whole upper body to follow up with a second string combo is neat. That's an awesome concept for a fight, but it's just visually I can't even appreciate it most of the time because I can barely see him.
Yeah.
Or rather, I see too much of him.
Yeah, and I think like when I'm thinking about him, like, what was something really cool that he did that made like I like my jaw drop, or like, oh shoot, that was amazing. And I'm like, not really. Like, even the other two bosses, like before, like big bosses before him, had really cool moments, or like the Warden had a super cool second phase, and so did Power Master. He really doesn't. His second phase, he just gets mad and starts using the gun. Like, he doesn't really change. So I think like it's a cool start, but I think there could have been more done with him. Like, maybe do a thing where, since there is such a distinction between his lower and top head, maybe they split apart and he like attacks you with both. You know what I mean?
Yeah, something like that, or like use more of his furnace type thing. Like, I feel like he only really uses it to refill his gun. Like, what if he liked and I know there's definitely a Dark Souls boss that did this before. It might have been the Smelter Demon or something along those lines. But like, maybe he opens up his stomach and he like unleashes like a flamethrower type move that way, where it's not like filling the room, but it's more like a straight beam that he just like, goes side to side, and maybe like it's slow enough to where players can sprint behind him and do damage while he's doing that attack.
Yeah.
Just that's just
something.
A thought. Like,
he doesn't change a lot throughout the fight. He kind of is pretty
use more of that furnace, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, use more of it. Like, it's a big fiery belly. It looks cool. Use it more.
Yeah. Be confident in yourself. But yeah, I think he kind of underdeveloped. But talking about bosses that transform, let's talk about the Archbishop, the fallen Archbishop. And I want to say, lore-wise, this boss is really cool, because also this is the first boss that we've seen where it's not a robot. Because up until this point in the game, before you get to this area, you're fighting puppets or regular people, and that's it. When you get to him, you're like, whoa, there's zombies in this game? And then you go through this church and you find out about this cult that worship this dude and how messed up it, and you go through this cathedral. It looks like a Dark Souls level. And as annoying as that clock tower is, it's a pretty cool thing. But for the actual boss, I think this one's sick. I love the fact that it starts off big and slow, but its second phase is really a 1.5 stage, because it gets the front part, but the back half of him is still the first boss. So I think visually that's really cool. It does kind of lead to the thing where if you don't want to learn the second phase, you just run behind him and just fight the first phase twice.
That's what I did the first time too.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, like you look very scary in your second half. I'm just gonna stick with the half I know. It's a really cool fight. I
Yeah.
do love it. Not in like we talking about like the visual design of these bosses. I think the Archbishop does does the horror element of this game very well. This is where it really starts to feel a lot like Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Because of like just this monstrous thing where like you can still see a semblance of what was human left in there, but now it's the rest of this like almost like looks like some sort of parasitic like alien life form just taking hold. I like the fact that basically you realize that what you were fighting in the first phase was just a cocoon before he sprouts his other half.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. I like how you meet him the first time also. Um, it's whenever you enter the church and like the music is like playing in the church, and I think it cuts out because when you reach the back, and then all you see is just this like some weird like almost humanoid creature with a long centipede type body and wings coming out eating a corpse.
Yeah.
And it just looks at you, and then it just descends further into the hole. It descends further into like this dark pit of madness. And for me, it's just such a cool, like, simple moment of like horror. In a weird way, I don't know if you've seen it, Drew, but it reminds me a bit of like Midnight Mass, where you have this like horrific creature wrapped up in like holy or kind of like Christian themes or elements.
Yeah.
Like it's like because like this was the bishop, this was like a holy figure in the city,
He's
and
the
now it's
Archbishop.
like
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
He's
and
the
it,
bishop above bishops.
that was just yeah, and now he's just this like monstrous creature, and I really like that. It is a horror trope that I am weak for, but I love it all the same.
I'm very torn between this boss because like obviously it's gonna be ranked high, but I am concerned. It's like, do I give it the S tier? Because visually and story wise, this is like one of the coolest looking bosses, and it might get S tier just because of that. I don't, and the fight's not bad. I'm just like like there's a lot of really fun fights in this game, and I'm wondering is this one of it? Like, does this make S tier basically for visuals alone? I want your thoughts of it. Do we put it high A tier, or do you think we give it the S?
I think it's like a high A tier. I really like this boss. And like I said, I've already mentioned I like the horror elements, but it's one of those things where I really love the visual design and the cutscene for this boss, but the actual fight is
It's okay.
it's tough. I would say it's tough, but kind of unremarkable.
Yeah.
You know, like it just kind of feels like the typical sort of like you go in, you parry this, you dodge that,
Yeah.
whatever. Which I guess you could say for a lot of them, but it just the fight didn't really do it for me.
No, he has like one unique attack where they like blow up with like souls or ergo or whatever. But honestly, yeah, it's the more I think about the actual fight with him, it's like it's not anything spectacular. Like the coolest thing is the fact that like it splits into two. But that's again, this boss has a lot of cool visuals, but not a lot of like in fight moments. Like,
Yeah.
There's no like puppet master where he picks you up and starts wailing on you.
Yeah, I would probably say I am safe with saying I will put this in A tier just because the visual and story elements behind this boss, and also the one cool thing about its fight is that it essentially allows you to choose which phase to fight in the second half. It's just like, you want to stick it in the front and try to new fight and learn those new moves, or do you want to go to the back and just stick with what you already know? Like, I like that. Yeah,
which isn't as easy because you still have to run past the first bit to get back there.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as it sounds.
Even back there, he still has a couple of new moves that will hit you from there for sure.
Yeah.
So
high A tier, but
like that's still like. That's still a cool element to the boss. So yeah, A tier. I think this is a solid A tier choice.
I agree with that. Now, moving on, the next fight that you get is technically a human fight, but this is the first gang. Is that gang fight? Is what the Souls term is?
We call them gank fights, where it's like
yeah.
more than one person.
And it's the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. Specifically, you only have to kill the eldest, but it is as you're fighting him, his brothers and sister come in and like fight. And what's unique about them is a lot of them have like some animations that you can do, but a lot of them have their own unique moveset. Like there is no weapon like the sister has, and like even like the closest one is like I think he's the second oldest. The tall one with the spear like has some similar stuff, but a lot of them have their own unique moveset despite being human. And it's even cool. I think he's called the Battle Frenzy brother has your like arm hook blade that he can use, which is pretty fun. And then, of course, the actual
puppet string ability.
Yeah, the actual brother himself is. I love how visceral he is with like that huge weapon, and he's not as by himself. He's not as hard as other bosses, but he's not a cakewalk either. And the fact that it throws. At one point, you could have it throws like 3 other people on top of you if you don't like fight it right. Is pretty fun. So, your thoughts on the Brotherhood?
I would say one thing about the eldest that I like about him is I would say he's the most guts-like of all the characters in the game.
He is very
and
guts.
If it's a Souls type game, if it's a Souls type game, like lo and behold, there's gonna be a Berserk reference somewhere. I feel like this guy's the closest to it. Where like, what is it? Guts' sword is described as basically just a big hunk of metal. This dude literally is using a big hunk of metal as a sword. Like, I don't even think it's a proper blade. Like, it just looks like literally just a slab that he's able to pick up and swing around.
Yeah. It being sharp does nothing.
It does not matter. He's just gonna crush you with it anyways.
Yeah.
I'm gonna probably be in the minority on this. I really like this fight. I know a lot of people don't like gank fights, and I understand why. But one thing that I've learned, especially since playing through like the Dark Souls series a couple of times and seeing a lot of these kinds of fights, is most of the time with these fights, they're all kind of have the same design choice, where basically when you have more than one enemy on the field, like more than one boss, what they usually do is they have one enemy that's more aggressive, that's on top of the player, and the other one is in the back, more passive. Every now and then they'll throw an attack, but they're just going to kind of stay out in the back. And then they'll switch around. I like that. Like, it does put you on edge, but I do like the element. I do like how the fight works is all you have to do is take down the eldest brother. The rest of the brothers don't matter. And what I like is that if you do just focus him, though, you'll eventually have to put up with all 3 of them attacking you at the same time. Like, the eldest brother and the rest of them.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a really cool kind of, like, choice. Obviously, I think the better idea is to just take him on, take care of, like, one of the younger brothers, which isn't too bad, honestly, as long as you're just patient. So yeah, I like this fight. I think he's a fun, very unique kind of like Stalker human fight. It's really neat. I like the one thing if there is one thing I don't like is Drew. I know you said they're a girl, but I technically think they're still a boy. Is I really hate some of the voice lines for some of them, because you're gonna die a lot to this fight and you're gonna hear them. I hate the younger brother. I'm sorry to the voice actor. You did a great job at being an annoying little piece of shit.
If you're talking about the one with 2 swords, that's a girl. That's a sister. But if you're talking about the one with like an arm,
sure?
it says sister.
I'm pretty sure they're all brothers. Is it sister?
Because she said.
I would need to get this back.
I'm like 90% sure, because on the last fight it says Black Rabbit Hood's youngest sister. Because when you fight them all at the spoilers, but when you fight them for a second time, it's Battle Frenzy. I forget what the middle one is. and then there's one that's called a sister, and it's her. Also, she looks like a girl. I understand that, like,
no, I
like
get
they're all
that,
wearing
but, like,
costumes.
I was
but,
like, yeah, no, and I mean, like, I get that that this little, in my head is like, man, that's a really effeminate sounding little brother. But and honestly, I have no issue with that. Just want to make that clear. I have no issue with like the gender of this person. I just had no idea. It's like it seems like it's a guy, but apparently it's a girl. I don't know. Either way, the youngest of the Brotherhood. I'll say this much: the youngest of the Brotherhood is still the most annoying one. Not even because of their attack strings or anything. They actually do so little damage. It's kind of funny. It's just, God, she's annoying. Her voice lines are just awful.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think that might be on purpose. So props to the voice actress behind it. You did a great job. But I hated their voice. It made me want to. It at a certain point, it did feel like glass in my ears.
I don't think I ever got that bad, but it was the most like you are definitely the youngest and the most annoying.
Yeah, so I didn't like her, but in all seriousness, though, with this fight, I did enjoy it. I think it's tough. It's gonna test your mettle. I think more than anything, what's gonna get players killed on this fight most of the time is they're gonna try to rush through it. They're gonna basically be like, beat down the big brother as fast as you can, and when the rest of the family starts to jump in, maybe try to spam all your abilities to try to kill them as quickly as possible, yada yada yada. And it's like, no, this fight is a test of patience. You just need to wait for your time, get your openings, guard at the right time. It's okay. Don't push it. And I think that's what makes this fight stand out to me.
So are you, because I agree, so you're good with me putting in A tier where I've placed it.
I'm good with an A tier choice on this one.
Yeah, because also I will say, they have arguably one of the coolest like boss intros where they like all strut up and they put the coffin down and it says liar in the middle. I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, that'd be a sick album cover. Like that'd be a really cool album cover. Which is probably why
they did look like they were posing for the album cover. Yeah.
Which is probably why they used that moment for the trailer, so it makes sense.
It's been a while since I've watched the cartoon, but is the coffin with the word liar in it a reference to the Pinocchio story?
I don't know if I don't think the coffin said. I don't think so. I'm not sure. Every time I see it, I think of that one SpongeBob meme. The like.
That's fair.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just like SpongeBob Patrick. Like, all right, get in.
No, I get what you mean on that. It's just something about it when I saw that, like, it activated something in my brain. It's like, was this in the cartoon, like the Disney animated film? And I just don't really remember.
I'm pretty sure like Black Cat and Red Fox are from like the original story, and like a lot of these other names are. Yeah, because they're like they're like his like conscience or whatever. Or well, no, Jiminy is his conscience. They're like temptation, I think is what they're supposed to represent.
It's funny that I've played this game, and yet, as interesting it is with all the Pinocchio elements, I really do like that. It has not, weirdly enough, caused me to go back and watch the Pinocchio, like, original Disney film, or even, like, there were a bunch of recent, like, reboot the Pinocchio movies come out, right? Like, one with Guillermo del Toro did.
A lot of, look, I'm not going to lie, from reviews, I'm pretty sure they're all really bad. Oh, we don't got to worry about them.
No, hold on. I think the Guillermo del Toro one was pretty good, though, right? Like, the animated one? That's
It might have been, but I just didn't. I think I just didn't look it up. It might be good. Anyway, let's stick with our current list, and so now we're into about the halfway mark, and this is I just realized these are in the wrong order. Don't you fight? God dang, I keep doing that.
What is it?
Do you fight Mad Puppet first, or do you fight the King first? Do you fight the clown?
The Mad Puppet is like the clown.
Yes.
No, yeah, you fight the clown first because
Okay.
like what you're doing is because
Yeah,
if you remember what
you're
you're doing
making
is
your
like
way to him.
you're
Yeah.
making the approach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
this
That's
is
right.
the approach
that
to
was
like,
they were in the wrong
opera
order.
house.
Okay, so this boss, as Seth has named my best friend, this thing is so goddamn annoying. For the sole reason of he doesn't have a normal arena like everyone else. You have to fight your way to him every time you lose, and you have to get rid of these like little fire dudes. Or I mean, you can still like run past everyone and like run into this back alleyway to go fight him. I've actually seen speedrunners, if you do it a certain way, you can actually go and activate that checkpoint and never fight him technically.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's a way to like skip him. I don't know if it's entirely intentional, but still, this boss is, I would make the argument, one of like the most annoying. I don't even think they're the hardest. They're just so frustrating to fight. But I get that that's more likely by design because it's a clown and it's laughing at you the entire time. But it's just, gosh, screw this thing.
It's an annoying piece of shit by design. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like, oh, I remember like, yeah, because you were in the call with me when I was fighting this thing, and I was cursing the heck out of this thing. It was the first time where I was like I had died before the boss, but it was the first time where it got me frustrated the way I died. Because I'm like, what do you mean you have an extra attack? What do you mean you have a double red attack? What do you mean like, oh, if I'm far enough away, it's all like a ranged attack? It's just, it's one of those things where it's like this boss will take you 3 or 4 tries because you just have to see all of his dumb tricks, and then you can actually fight him. So yeah,
that's fair, and it's also like the arena like takes a lot of time. I do remember fighting him and having like a hard time with it, and I was a little bit ahead of you in the game at this point, and all I could think to myself is like, I didn't know how bad it'd be, but I did have a feeling it'd be like, oh, Drew's gonna like this fight. I did. I don't know why. I just had a feeling that you would. I think the toughest part is first how you're introduced with them. You're right. Like you have to deal with a lot of enemies. So if you're dying over and over, there's a lot of what I call prep work you have to do. It's like you have to clear out the enemies, you have to clear out the flamethrowers, you have to clear out the grenade dudes. And thankfully he kind of waddles down. You have to make sure you jump out of the way before his big giant rolling ball comes down. He's such clearly a troll boss, but in a weird way, I kind of like that about him, is that he is such like he is by design meant to troll the player. And I think that's why he's almost kind of like treated more like a mini boss rather than a big proper boss. Spoiler, he does come back again as like a mini boss.
His second, when he comes back, isn't on this list, but that's probably because it's only a mini boss and like it doesn't take long.
He doesn't
to kill
get
him.
out far, yeah.
Yeah.
I personally though, I like this boss. If anything, he does encapsulates the one thing I feel like this game's lesson is trying to teach us, is like, just when you think an attack string is over, you're wrong. There's more. There's always another attack on this string. It's just like, all right. It's like, all right, this guy just did like a fucking like 14 string combo. He's done, right? Nah, there's always more.
Like, oh, this is a recovery animation, this little spin move. Nope, he's coming down with a fist.
Nah, it's another attack.
Yeah.
Surprise. Like, I always, that's the, and this is not just him. This is literally the recurring theme throughout this whole game, it felt like to me, is just like, oh, you think that string is done? It's not over, pal. We're not even halfway through. There's still more to go.
You want... Yeah, I think that next boss, but we'll talk about him later. But yeah,
but like in terms of, I should probably talk about him. I like him. Once you trust me, you will get good with him because you're just gonna have to fight him that much.
Yeah.
But once you get good with him, he's probably one of the most fun bosses to come back to and fight in the game. Honestly, on repeat playthroughs, just because like once you know how to like, you know, you get the rhythm right, you're perfect guarding his attacks, it feels so good to fight him. And it almost feels like every time you come back on a repeat playthrough to fight him, it's like getting a little bit more payback against this fucker. So I, because of that, because I like his attack strings and I like his
Yeah.
animation design, I I would put him at a B tier. He has a
Okay.
lot of he has enough neat things going for him. I don't know. I just don't. I feel like it'd be wrong to call him an A tier. It's like, listen, he's cool, he's fun, he's not that cool. Is the
Yeah.
best way I can put it.
Like for me, I'm also putting him at the bottom of B tier more for just because he annoyed me. But like for me, a lot of it, like he's a very like he's a knowledge check type boss, and basically that means like in a fighting game terms, like there's an easy way around this, but if you just don't know it, it's going to mess you up. But once you know how to get around it, like it's just as simple of just like, oh, if you see him glow red, you run away from him, and then the range attack's super easy to parry. And that's it. It's just one of those things where it's just like, and I guess you could argue that for a lot of these bosses, but for him specifically, like a lot of his moves, it's just like once you know the weird trick that he does, he's so much easier. It's significantly easier.
Oh yeah,
So
and like that's what makes him so like such a fun boss to like get into the rhythm with. But I do agree, we're just like he's one of those like kind of like I guess what do people call them, like the skill check bosses, like you like that term you use.
oh, and I just
So
said
yeah,
knowledge. Yeah,
he's a neat.
yeah,
Yeah, he's basically there to basically be like, hey, you're about to reach the halfway point of the game. Are you sure you up for this? And then
yeah.
so he's gonna test your might a bit.
Are you paying attention? Well, so speaking of the halfway
You will
point,
know.
yeah, the halfway boss, Romeo, King of Puppets, and this boss is. I think this boss has the most distinct difference between his phase 1 and his phase 2. Like you want to talk about that, those it's almost an argument those shouldn't even have the same name of how different you fight those two phases. Because phase 1, he's in this big mech, and it's what you'd think. He's got a crown on, he's got everything, it's cool. And then you beat that, and in phase 2, he's like your size. He's got a really cool like scythe move. He has might be the longest attack string in the game of freaking. There's like 16 or like 17 hits, and he's set your weapon on fire. I remember when I was fighting him, you were in the call, and I asked him, like, what do you do against that? Is it better to roll or try to parry or what? And you're just like, honestly, you just gotta hope you have health. And I'm like, what? And like, that's
Yeah,
yeah. You either just get really good or you just hope that you can take it.
Yeah, I like even whenever I remember this much. Even this was especially bad on New Game Plus. Weirdly enough, is whenever I got to that attack, it was just like I can guard it, but like even with perfect guarding, because you have to, spoiler, but like with the P organ upgrade, there isn't a P organ upgrade where you regain stamina on perfect guard until like New Game Plus or some shit. So, what I found was like, yes, even with perfect guarding, and I was not perfect guarding every attack. There's so many of them in that string. Even with perfect guarding, I would say about 75% of the attacks, it was draining my stamina so quickly that I just couldn't guard anymore. And it's just like, damn, this guy's just still going. He's just still going, man.
I remember I tried so many things. I tried rolling. I tried using the Aegis shield. It just wasn't. I think the only thing that like might work is doing the gear grinder, the auto perfect things. But even that, like,
yes,
you only
I
get
did abuse that.
Yeah, you only get so many hits, and you have to like make sure you have that activated. It's not obvious when he's going to do it. Like, obviously, he sets his blade on fire, but you better hope that you have.
Yeah,
one
no,
of
he
those.
does his own grinder move. Yeah, and that's cool. It's like, and that is exactly what also happened with me too. Eventually, it was just that like he starts setting up like the grinder move, and I saw that he's lighting his fire on. I was like, shit, I gotta do mine too. And I'm like putting on the perfect guard. It's like, please get this off in time, please. It's it's neat. I do want to, before we get into like his second phase too much, because like second phase is obviously badass. I really want to talk about his first phase. Is it basically his big? At the time, we just thought it was a big puppet, which I guess it technically still is, but his big mech form. That fight is really cool. It does feel like a whole different like boss fight. But it really is neat. I do like where it catches you off guard the first time, but because he's doing the sweeping attack with like the big sort of like, it's hard to describe them, pipes?
Like vacuum cleaner arms?
Whatever those are. Yeah, the vacuum cleaner arms. Like, it's like 1-2. And it's like, the first time you might block the first hit, but you'll probably get hit by the second one. But I do like the rhythm of once again, it's one of those things where once you get into the rhythm of the fight, it's like, oh, that feels cool. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, just 1-2, 1-2 each time he does like one of those sweeping attacks. I also really like the one where he does like a little, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a dance move spin, and then he just slams his fist down. And if you perfect guard it, he follows it up quickly with a second one where he's like another little cha-cha slide. He slams you, and it's like, I don't know. I like that. It's so cool. It's also when I did a New Game Plus playthrough with the True Dragon Sword, which is not a katana, a hwando, I believe that's pronounced. It's like a Korean style katana, even though I think the Koreans would argue it came first. Which, hey, I'm not going to contest them on it. It's their sword.
And their game.
Really cool sword. Yeah, and it's their game. It's a really cool sword. It also has like a built-in parry mechanic with its strong attack, and this boss is especially fun to use the True Dragon Sword with because it's so cool when he does like timing the slam down move is actually not that hard with the parry. So anytime I see he's about to do his little dance move slam, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready for this. And parrying it back at him is so satisfying.
Yeah.
So just for that, this fight is already amazing with that first phase. I really do like the big robot fight.
It's really cool. And then on top of that, the immediate next fight is the actual like human, which is, I think, even though one of like the brothers had your robot arm, this is the first. And honestly, when I think about, well, no, not the only, but one of the few fights where you are fighting like what I would consider an actual like equal to you. Like it's another puppet. I know a lot of the humans resemble you, but this is the one where it's like he's your size, he's using a similar weapon, like you get his weapon for beating him. And it's a really cool fight, and also just like lore wise, this is like a really big point in the story. So like they made a point to make him like fight, and like you said, he has a gear grinder, he has very similar kind of stuff that you do. So I think it's like a really cool, and especially I like how different the two phases are. A lot of times when a boss goes from like one phase to the other, it's like, oh, like with the Warden, he gets electrified moves, or with the King's Flame, he just like gets more on fire. This one, it's like, oh, it's a different boss. Everything you learned in the first phase is useless now. It's a new guy, and that's super cool. I don't think I'll get many arguments here. I think this is the first S tier. Like, the first fight alone is amazing. I think the second fight's even better.
Oh, yeah. I think I agree with you on the S tier. I really do like the second fight just for the same reasons. I think not only is it just a cool, straight-up fight between you and this other person that you can definitely say is kind of like your equal, but it's just thematically, I feel like a lot of things are coming together. It's the turning point in the story when you realize, like, something's not quite adding up with what everyone's telling me about what's going on and what's causing the puppet frenzy, which is cool. I like it. I like the Romeo fight after the King Puppet fight so much, because the scythe move is so cool. Like, it really just comes down to that. I love like his little like dashes and stuff. Like I like where the one where he jumps up in the air and does like the Goku Ultra Instinct spin, and then just comes down with the fucking like scythe. Like, I love that so much. And there's all kinds of cool moves that he does. The one thing I would criticize about this fight is Oh, and we forgot to mention the other cool visual thing. Part of his face is burnt off because you blew up his mech, so it's literally a Terminator fight.
Oh, yeah.
It literally does like half his face is burnt off, flashes red with the eye. Which leads me into the thing that I am going to criticize this boss about, which is his grab attack. I will say this. Of all the times I fought him, even on New Game Plus, I would say 90% of the time when he throws out this grab, which is basically him putting the scythe behind Pinocchio and pulling backwards towards himself, that is his grab attack. 90% of the time it caught me. Even and I get it, like in their minds, and it totally makes sense. The red flashing eye should be the clue that, like, okay, he's doing the grab attack, but it felt like it comes out so fast that I just never really got out of the way of it in time. And the worst part is, here's the thing, even if you do get out of the way of it in time, he immediately follows up with like a charge forward attack. And it's like, God damn it. I was just like, I dodge out of this just to get smacked anyways.
Yeah, you have to like, what is it? You have to dodge then immediately parry or something, or try to dodge roll twice. I don't know if you get
dodge then block. Yeah. I don't know if you have enough time to dodge roll twice, but yeah, like it's such a dick move, and I think it's a neat idea for an attack. I really do like it, but I think it comes down to the problem with this game where, and this is not just this boss, it's pretty much a lot of the other enemies and bosses, is just I really don't like the grab attacks. I feel like there needs to be some sort of like more, visual language added to it, because you already get the fury attacks where like they turn red and it's the game telling you like you cannot dodge this, you cannot block it, you have to perfect guard this. There's just no way around this attack, which is like cool. It's like a great do or die moment. I think there needed to be something similar like this, like make them glow blue or something. Let me give an example. Sekiro, which I would say game draws heavy elements from. In Sekiro, it's almost like a meme. Whenever a enemy is about to do a really big unblockable attack, which would also include grabs, it would be a big red kanji show up over them before they do the attack. I feel like there needed to be something like that to help communicate, like, hey, this isn't like a red attack where you could just like perfect guard it even. You have to dodge out of the way. So there just needed to be something here. Make them glow blue. I don't know. Like, just something.
No, I agree with that. Like, maybe even put a thing above their head, like do the Spider-Man thing where it's a blue indicator above their head, like something. Make it more obvious that this is not a regular attack or a red attack. So no, I agree with that. But like you said, that's more of an issue with like all of these bosses and everyone here. That's not just him. I think in terms of like comparing him to the rest of the game, and it's very obvious because of how important Romeo is to the story of this game, it's clear this was like so much time was put into his fight and this one. So I think like, yeah, this, despite that issue, which I do agree with, it deserves to be up there.
Easy S tier.
Easy
like,
S tier.
Even with that issue I said, yeah, there's just no way around it. It's too good.
It goes to S tier. Moving on from this fight, you then run into one of the coolest characters in this, because up until this point, like, there's only been a few. Well, I guess there's been 2 bosses that talk to you if you don't count the humans. But Champion Victor is a really cool fight. Who would be surprised, Seth, that we like the pro wrestler fighter in this game?
It's so awesome. I agree. His fight is so good. And his character just comes through so well.
Yeah. He's doing pile drivers, he's rushing, he's doing all this stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
What I like about it is when you get down to it, his fight is very simple. There's not a lot going on, like super complex. It's just a straight up good old fashioned fight against this dude, where he's just like, I was the strongest wrestler, but then my mortal body gave out. So then they did crazy ass experiments to me So now I'm like this huge Frankenstein's monster type deal, and I'm here to beat your ass, Pinocchio.
It's
It's like, damn.
It's so
cool.
It's like if Hulk Hogan decided, I want to be immortal, and and make me like put all these like weird chemicals and alchemist stuff in me. It's so sick.
And Champion Victor is still not as problematic as Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
But I will say that like I like just the fact that it's a straight up fight. I also think this is the first time where it made me think like this was the first boss that made me think like, yes, you can perfect guard it, but should you? Because like he has a lot of attacks where even if you perfect guard it, it knocks Pinocchio pretty far back. So that even if you perfect guard it, you don't really have a way to follow up immediately with an attack of your own. And it started making me think like maybe there's some attacks it'd be better if I just dodge out of the way and just like attack that way instead of like. So it's like a nice blend of like you're not just perfect guarding, you're also like dodging and stuff like that. And I think that's awesome, honestly.
Yeah, he has a really satisfying combo of just like you like block the screen, and then he tries to like. And it'll catch you the first couple of times, but he tries to throw in one sneaky little like underbelly jab at you, and it's such a satisfying feeling of block, sidestep that jab, and then punish. Like that's really cool. It's like it feels like a boxing match of just like what's better to try to like counter hit versus just take the block.
Exactly. I love that. Like just it really is like because it's a simple fight, it allows it to be just a really nice dance where you learn his moves and you just go back and forth, dodging, blocking, parrying if you have the ability to. And it just makes it just like such a fun fight. So yeah, Champion Victor, I would say also is an S tier fight. His character just shines through with just how much of just this crazy ass pro wrestler he is. I don't even know if he's that much of a crazy fanatic at all. He just seems to be really into wanting to fight you. Like that's his motivation. So his character is great. His story is great. Yeah, his character is great. His story is great. His fight is great. I think this is another easy S tier for me personally. Yeah. I have no complaints for this fight.
I don't think so either. Like, part of me feels weird of just like, oh, we're doing 2 S tiers in a row, but I'm like, when it's these bosses, is like, there's no other place for them. I agree. Yeah, I thought. I don't think he beats the King of the Puppets, but I'm like, no, he needs to be up there.
Yeah, but he's definitely like an S tier style. I agree.
Yeah.
One thing I will also add that does help elevate him is I know we've kind of talked a little bit about the boss weapons. He probably has my favorite motivity / you can call it also strength stat weapon, which is the Frozen Feast. I don't know if you got this, Drew.
Oh, it's that
it's
one.
Basically,
no, I got it. Yeah. I didn't use it very much.
The best way I could.
But.
It was once I got that weapon, Drew, it was the weapon I used till the very end of the game, and it is so fun. The best way I could describe it is a really high scaling motivity weapon. It's a huge ass ultra great sword. It looks like it's a sword made of rocks, but what happens is as you attack an enemy with it, the rocks break away to reveal a crystal sword underneath, and basically the weapon attacks actually come out faster the more you hit the enemy with it. And it's like, oh, that's super cool. And then there's also like a Fable art where you could just immediately just break it open and have like the like Swift version of it all ready to go. And it also has a really cool like super strong attack as another Fable art. It was fun. I love that sword. I used it till the very end of the game on my first playthrough. Yeah. So that's another reason I like Mr. Champion Victor, because he also has one of my favorite weapons in the game.
I would say we might do a weapons tier list as well. We'll see, because there are a lot of weapons that I really like, especially the boss one. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember who gives it to you. I think actually, I think this is the one you get from the Fallen Angel, but the one I used all the time was the spear, the trident, because it could scale pretty decently into motivity, but also be fast and crit. And so that was one of like my favorite weapons to use. I think surprisingly, just by being motivated.
I think it was an Archbishop. That was the Archbishop one.
Yeah, I think that was. Yeah, that's right. Because you get the scythe from King of the Puppets. Yeah, and the spear is super fun to use. Anyway, but yeah, we might do a weapons one in the future. We'll see how well this do and how well this one does and how much we want to just talk about this game more. So moving on from Champion Victor, I don't have too much else to say about Puppet of the Future, but now there's two of them in a swamp. It's what they honestly at this point they're almost putting them in like regular enemies, because it's just their best use is like you can go and kill them for quartz and that's it. I don't know if like maybe it's slightly better than one, but not really because it's just you have to do it longer. So I don't.
It's D tier. If we had I'll make this simple for us here, Drew. This is D tier. If there was an F tier, I would use it too. I would put them there.
Yeah.
Just because this boss is just, I do have like a thing where like sometimes I'm okay sometimes with reusing fights. It happens. One of my favorite games is Elden Ring. There's a lot of reused fights, but also Elden Ring is like a 100-hour RPG, whereas this is also a fairly long game, but it's also shorter than a Souls game. I think it's shorter than the first Dark Souls game. One thing I would notice is there's maybe not as many bosses as like a typical Souls game, but when there is a boss, it makes an impact. But when they reuse a fight, it sticks out more in a game like this. And I really think like, yeah, this is D tier. The Puppet of Future, an F tier if I could make it that way. This is D tier. I would make it F tier. The Puppet of the Future fight was already not that great. And just throwing two of them in a nasty swamp doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
So
of all the bosses here to try to reuse, the fact that it's this one, I guess technically like yes, Mad Clown is also reused, but the fact that you fight this thing twice really is like, really, we're doing this again? Okay, I guess. Like it's one of those things you run around, kill it, and you're just like, I'll do it because it gives me a good reward. And but that should not be the reason you go to fight a boss. That should not be the satisfying thing that you get from it. So
I mean, like shit, they even do the thing where like once again, it's also like that in another poison environment that you have to fight them in. It's just like, oh god, it's so. It's just this fight, especially in a game with like a lot of mostly excellent fights, it sticks out as a weird thing. It's just like, why would you do that?
It's clear that these two are these enemies are just like so differently, and I wouldn't even consider them bosses if it was just a thing where like they didn't take as long to kill. Like, why does it have? Why are these things
a health bar?
Yeah, why does the thing have a health bar? Why is this just not like an enemy that just takes a little less time to kill? And they're just there for set piece, which is just kind of a weird one. So
yeah.
So yeah, not much to say for them. If I made another list, they would go down there. Anyway, but moving forward, the actual boss of the swamp is the green monster of the swamp. And you want to talk about a boss that just loves its slow ass wind-up attacks. It's this thing. It is, I think, the king of doing a really big charge attack. Oh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to wind it up. I'm going to do it. And now I did it. Like, just such a long, like, come on type of enemy. So, in terms of visuals,
I agree with that.
I'll let you talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of the sins we could talk about with the bosses, the big wind-up attacks, the untelegraphed like grab attacks. But it's not so much that they're untelegraphed, it's so quick that it's like you blink and you miss it.
Yeah.
Kind of style of attacks. This boss is guilty of it. One of the attacks I really hate is its like really quick tentacle attack in its first phase, and there's actually two of them. There's one where it just slaps you with the tentacle, does a lot of damage, and you're like, what the hell? Where did that come from?
Why?
There's no wind up or anything. It just slaps you with it.
Yeah. And it's like, and most of its attacks are like really slow wind up, except that one. That one move is really fast for no reason.
And it's oh god, I did not like that, obviously. I also like the other one is the retreating attack where like as he's like backing up really quickly, he's also hitting you with the tentacles. That was another really bad one too that I did not like care for. So
just say the move that really got me, and this is in his second phase, I know, but like where he like you block like this like slam down move and like you block his tentacles, and unless you are like dead facing him, it won't hit you, but if you're anywhere around him, he does this last hitting thing where like he whips his tentacles all around him. I hate that move so much because I forgot every time I forgot he did that. I think I blocked the big move so many, and there were so many times where it's just like, oh, he's got one more, and just like, oh, whip, you know, a completely 360 around him. It was so annoying. Like the only way to like not be in it was like if you were like directly facing him when he hit you. But that was the move that frustrated me the most.
I feel that. I absolutely agree with that. I get what you say. He does that a lot, where it's like always one extra attack, and it just makes him more aggravating. It's a shame because like he is one of the most. I think, in my personal opinion, I think he's the toughest boss in the game, and I also think he's one of the most aggravating, just because so many elements of like the worst things about these bosses happen here with him. Like in his second phase, he also has like a grab that seems to come really quickly. Are we cool with talking about his second phase, by the way? Because it's like there's one thing I want to talk about. So like in his second phase, where basically he takes over the body of the scrapped Watchman that happens to be there, which is a neat detail. And it's kind of cool that a lot of his moves are basically just the scrapped Watchmans with some extra tentacle stuff thrown in there. But like, my god, like the grab attack is even worse here from in the second form. But also his charge, where he just like bull rushes you like 3 times over, and it ends with like a red fury attack. That is so exhausting, especially since the arena is not that big. So what would happen to me a lot of the times is he would charge me into like a corner where I can barely see shit, and he's just constantly running me over in a corner until it kills me. Because it's just like, well, I'm stuck here and I can't move the camera around. I just see his ass in my face. It was so frustrating to me. It's a shame because it's like, I like the design of this boss. I like the idea of him using the corpse of an older boss and taking on his moves with some extra stuff in it.
I agree.
It's a really neat idea. And like even his basic strings are fun, like the swipe, you know, like in his first phase. Like these are cool ideas, but I feel like it's just the arena is like too small. There's just one too many attacks that are just annoying. The charge attack I just mentioned is very hard to dodge out of the way, and you can't even dodge out of the way of the last version of it, obviously. So you have to perfect guard him to stop him in his tracks, because if you just guard, he's going to, as we call in the business, guard crush your ass. Where it's like, yes, you technically guarded that, but you're still going to receive fucking damage for it. So
it is. He is like, again, I agree with you. Like the fact that he takes over the Watchman is like really cool, and I like story-wise. But I think this boss is like everything we've talked about before that frustrates us, like our nitpicks about the combat and final boss. He is like, he accentuates all of it. That is his entire boss. Like he is, so much of his moveset is like the one annoying move from every other character. Like it is everything that like we have an issue with the combat can all be pointed somewhere in this one boss moveset, which makes him like the most frustrating. And so honestly, like, I think C tier. I'd rather fight Fuoco rather than him.
Honestly, I kind of feel that. It's weird because it's like on repeat playthroughs, I have found he is. Yeah, on repeat playthroughs, I have found I do enjoy his boss fight to a degree, but at the same time, I'm like, but he has like way too many like annoying things about him. Yeah, begrudgingly, I kind of agree. I think we should put him in C tier because honestly, I could see him being a really good A or even S tier boss if they would just address things like the grab attacks, the arena, the guard crushing charges, like address those issues, and I think I would definitely see this boss as like an A or S tier.
It could,
but
yeah,
as it stands, yes, we're going to tier.
Yeah, there's just too many issues with him. So moving forward, similar to what happened with, he took over the Watchman. Later, you refight the Puppet Master, except now he's corrupted by this, like, ergo, like, what do they call it? They call it, like, corpse. Or I forget what they call it. Anyway.
Carcass.
Like, carcass, that's what it was. Yeah, like, it's carcassized. So, it is, I think at least the idea of this is really cool, of, like, refighting the first boss where you originally fought him. And I think this, like you said, it's annoying when it's a refight of a boss, but I think this is a good way to do it story-wise, because it kind of it explains more of like what's happening in the world. Because in this point in the story, the puppets are just losing their minds for a second time, and aren't even being controlled by Romeo anymore. So I think this is a super cool like idea for a fight. In terms of the actual fight itself, he's very similar to Puppet Master. I think he has a few new moves, but so I don't know if I don't think I'd put him too far away from where we ranked him, but I think at least in concept, it's a cool idea.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a neat idea, but like, it's something we also haven't talked about, and it's a little bit annoying that like he's also having this too, because like the Green-Eyed Monster also have this, is where there's so many bosses with their attacks where they inflict some sort of status effect, like poison or decay or whatever it's called. And the Green-Eyed Monster was guilty of that too, and this guy is also guilty of it, and it's just, I mean, he's basically the parade master with some extra stuff, and he also does the whole the decay effect as well, which can damage your weapon. And then on top of that, he also spawns little enemies to fuck with you too. So
oh yeah, I forgot he spawns.
He does
guys.
have some new.
Yeah,
he has new things, but like none of the new things, in my opinion, necessarily make him a better boss. So he's probably right where he needs to be, C tier. I'm a little bit more mean about it. I would almost put him at D tier.
Really?
Yeah, just because it's like, he has some new things, but outside of his design being kind of cool, I think most of the new things make him a less fun boss to fight.
I don't know if I would drop him all the way to D tier. Mainly because, like, while decay is annoying, I feel like there's a worse status effect that we'll talk about. I'll put him in C tier, and I'll put him at like the bottom of C tier. Because I think even like the Swamp Monster and the King's Flame is better. And you did point this out that, like, yeah, it's a cool idea, but this is also exactly what the Green Monster just did. Like, we just fought a boss that took over a previous boss already. We've kind of already done this trope. Why are we going back? At least, I mean, it could be worse. They could have done the ultimate sin and made one of these things corrupt a puppet of the future, which would have been
Oh god.
We definitely would have
Even
made an
more
extra
annoying.
tier of just like it's going even further down.
We definitely need to F tier after that if that was the case. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I'm being a little I'm being a little harsh against against this guy. I'll admit that. But yeah, I'm cool with him being C tier. He's on honestly, like talking out loud. He's not that bad of a boss. He's just kind of like whatever.
Yeah.
I don't really have many strong feelings about him.
It's more just like, yeah, I also think he doesn't take that long to fight, probably because so much of it is the first boss. But like I swear he doesn't have nearly as much health as like most other bosses. Like it's pretty, you knock him down pretty quick. So it's almost hard to judge because of how fast that fight goes.
Right.
Yeah. Moving forward, this next boss, I will admit, if it wasn't already on this tier, like when I just downloaded this, I would have forgotten to put this boss in here. I forget that the Walker of Illusion was an actual, like, a boss. Because I don't know if it was...
Honestly, same.
Yeah, and I was like, maybe it was just me. Maybe I just had, like, I was really high level at that point, and I just got really lucky and beat her on my first try, but I was just like, And it's unfortunate because when you actually look at the design, it is a pretty interesting design. But it is just a thing where it's just like it's there, you know. It doesn't stand out, yeah. Which is unfortunate because again, this is one of the only few other times where you're fighting a boss is actually your height. Like it's not a giant monster anymore. It's one of you. And normally those are like somewhat pretty interesting, but honestly, like, yeah, just kind of forgettable. So I don't know.
I like the brain in the jar design. I really do.
Yeah.
I like the brain in the jar, but there's just something about this kind of boss where it's just like she's crazy. She's in a straitjacket. She has 2 knives, and she goes like, "Wah!" And then just like does like a big flurry attack, and it's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like I swear there's a
think
standard enemy that does this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It does. It really does feel like a standard enemy in a weird way.
Mhm.
I would say this boss is.
I think you're thinking the same
She's
thing.
C tier. She's not bad.
Yeah,
She's C
yeah.
tier. She's not like terrible, but she's also doesn't really stand out. The one
Yeah.
thing that really did stand out about me in her fight is the fact that in her second phase she does like get the clone for is an illusion. Like that's kind of cool. But like
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even remember she did that. I think I just always beat up the first. I didn't even remember she had a clone. It's just
she does.
I think the only thing that keeps me from putting her in D tier is at least she's more fun than the Popo of the Futures. Like this is almost just like this is saved for them. She's nowhere near this bad, but I do think she's like, yeah, she's up here though.
Right.
So moving forward from them, you fight the Black Rabbit Hood Brotherhood a second time, except now this is a proper game. Like you are fighting 3 at a time. There's nothing you can do about it. I think they're cool, and I think there's a lot of cool things about this fight. First of all, it is annoying. I will say it is annoying that all 3 of them has different stats effects. That said, all 3 of the stats effects get cured by the same thing. So it's not like if one of them had shock or decay, or no, decay is one of them. Like if it had shock or what's the one that insta kills you? It's
Disruption.
If one of them had that, then this would be the worst fight in the game. But no, all of their stat effects get cured by the same thing. I think it's cool. I also think it's cool about the fact that like if you were to break the sword, which most people do, but if you break the eldest brother's like big heavy sword in the first fight, the second time you see him, the sword's still broken. It's still shattered in half. He's still fighting with it. He's still swinging at you. But yeah.
But that's a neat detail. Like that's cool
Yeah.
that they take the time to remember that.
Yeah, that's cool. So I think this fight's cool. It is like again, it's another one where it's like it's reuse. This is one of the ones where it's like reusing the most assets, but it's kind of almost like a reverse way of doing the fight. Of in the first one, it was mainly you're focused on the elder brother. This one, you have to fight the siblings first, and then the eldest at the end.
Yeah, it's a reverse of the original fight, which is a neat concept.
Yeah. Yeah, your thoughts.
Man, talking about this fight. I am not in love with this fight. Not as much as I like that first one, admittedly.
No. Yeah.
I think it's a little. I hate to put it this way. I think it's a little lady. I think it's kind of the same thing what we talk about with Puppet of the Future. Weirdly enough, I think it's a little lazy. Because basically it's not much different. Now, once the eldest brother does kind of spawn into the fight, he does kind of have like some unique, like his own moves. Like he does these big ergo shockwaves because he was resurrected or whatever, which is a neat concept. But I don't know. There's not enough going on here to make me think like, oh man, this is such a cool fucking fight. So
yeah, I think
I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, what are you thinking?
I think I'm gonna have to be a little mean here. I'm gonna have to say this is like a C tier fight because it's like it's just not different enough. It's not like a D tier. It's not bad. It's built off the basis of another really good fight. But yeah, it is just a D tier fight to me.
You mean C? I will agree.
Yeah,
I will agree. It's nowhere near as fun as like as the first time you fight. Because the first time you fight, that's cool. And I think story-wise, it's cool that you do fight them again. I think there should have been a rematch, given that like you only killed one of them. But I will admit,
right?
That, like, yeah, it's a downgrade, and I do wish that there was more like unique elements. I'm trying to, because like I don't know, and it might just be a thing where like I had fun fighting them, so that's why I want to rank them higher. Like, because part of me is like, oh, I want to put them in B tier because it's the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. They're cool and it's a cool fight. But I'm like, how much of that fight was the second phase? Or excuse me, how much of them being cool was in the second time you saw them, or is it just reusing like the same details that we did before? And it's like, yeah,
it was already a good fight before, like, and so it's just like, is this fight good because it's actually bringing something new to the table, or is it just good because it's using something that you've already done before? And I think it's using something that you've already done before. That's why.
Yeah, I think you kind of convinced me that that's where they go.
And to see you go.
Yeah. So yeah, now on to the Door Guardian. So yeah, you go through this big story thing. You finally get to the Alchemist
we have to
Castle.
talk about this guy. He's just fucking D tier. He is F tier.
You're right. He is D tier. You're right. He goes there.
Drew, let me ask you this. How long did it take for you to figure out, like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do? Like, how long did it take?
I don't know how long time-wise, but it took about like 3 or 4 tries. Like, I don't know how long like time-wise it took, but it was one of those things where it was like, oh, that's it. And I maybe an hour, maybe longer.
Yeah.
It was
I think
really
I was
stupid.
somewhere around that too.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. I was like, oh my god, this boss is so tough. It was to the point where I thought, like, oh, I see a switch in the back. Maybe I'm not supposed to actually fight him. Maybe I'm supposed to run past him and try to open this door while this almost invincible boss. Because, like, how it works is, like, you do so little damage to him at first. It's like, what's the deal? And it's just like, I'm doing so little damage to this guy. I guess I should just run over here and try to escape. And it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And then apparently you're supposed to hit one of his little legs over and over till he falls over, and then you do a fatal attack. You do it 3 times, and it's over.
Yeah.
That's the fight.
It's so like, and also you don't even dream about trying to parry anything he does because everything does shock and everything, and then it makes your weapon really slow. And you can't, and your stamina can't regain fast enough, and it's so annoying. And this boss is so much like if Green Monster is annoying because of like the game's mechanic, this monster like ignores all the game's mechanics, everything the game has taught you up until this point, and it's just like it's just like a thing in the way. It's a very annoying thing to deal with because also you don't. One of the really fun things about Lies of P is how different people can play. Like, if you have a big, slower weapon and go into motivity, you can hit really hard but slower. If you do technique, you can hit really fast in this. This boss ignores all of that. It's like there's only one way to beat him because you do like 6 damage regularly. You just hit it, and there's no good visual indicator that that's the leg. Like that this leg is what you're supposed to hit, or in the fact that his leg is targetable, and that's the only way to figure it out. And that's how I figure it out is like I can target his stomach or his leg. Well, his leg doesn't have armor on it, so I guess I'm targeting the leg. And that was it. And it is so frustrating to just like you can only do stagger attacks, and then that's how you kill it. Everything else is useless.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's like you basically got it right there, where it's just like that's what makes this fight so annoying. Is just like he's just it like as you said, it ignores all the mechanics that you have learned so far in the game. It does nothing with them, and it's just like, all right, this is just a really weird gimmick boss fight where the gimmick is just you hit him in the leg over and over until he dies. It's just like that's not fun. Like. Granted, Souls games are no stranger to gimmick boss fights. They are definitely there. I remember in Dark Souls 2, like there's a chariot one where you have to run around arena until you close the door so it like closes down on this big ass chariot that's chasing you. But you don't even do something cool like that where you like lure this boss into a trap or whatever. You just hit his leg over and over. Like that's just what I can't get over. It's just like that's it. That's the secret.
Yep.
Just hit his leg.
Just hit his leg and he'll follow. And there's no way to like it's not like if you like met like the deserter guy beforehand and he's like, "Oh, no one can get past the door guardian, but like here I'll tell you a secret." Like there's no unless I just missed it, but like there's no indicator that that's what you're supposed to do. There's nothing about it. Because before this boss, you just went through a whole big lore dump of like what the story's about, and then you go to this castle and then you fight him, and that's it. And you're just like, what is this thing? Like, there's no way for the player to figure that out naturally, other than just lose to him. And that like it's not like, oh, if you were paying attention in the story, now you're rewarded. Even then, that would still be annoying because it's not fun to fight. Like, even when you know what to do, it's not fun. Yeah, this boss. Honestly, I changed my mind.